Hello, Denise. How are you today?
Hi, Anneka. I'm great. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm really good. It's so good to have you on the podcast. And for our listeners, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Denise Hamilton-Mace, and I am the founder and editor of the Low No Drinker magazine, which is also now a blog and a podcast as well. And I publish this magazine to share with the world the wonders of low and no alcohol drinks.
Amazing. And it is such a cool magazine. I think it's amazing that you have created this and are creating this, and it's a much needed part of the sober space. And what led you to this point where you are successfully publishing this magazine?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I'm glad you like it. So my story is, I always say it's probably not the most interesting story in the world, but I think it's probably quite common among most people that I tend to speak to these days, which is that I was working in hospitality. So my background is 24 years in hospitality, bars, restaurants, clubs. I've even worked in race courses and put on an event that the Queen attended. So I did that for a really long time and I absolutely loved it. Moved through the industry, then moved into events and sales, and I was on maternity leave with my second, and lockdown hit. And despite being reassured by my boss several times that my job was fine, I got a text message from him about 5 o'clock on a Friday one week saying that HR would be in touch next week. And I was like, yeah, right. I was like, okay, I know what that's
I could
about.
ruin someone's weekend in one
I
day.
know, I know.
Oh,
So yes, I was made redundant, which, it was the pandemic, it happened to loads of people. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. All I knew was that I didn't want to go back into hospitality. I had two small kids, and it's just that environment, the late nights, the boozing, all that stuff. It was just not something that fitted with where I wanted to be now. But then I had no idea what it is that I did want to do.
yeah.
So I spent quite a bit of time just sort of plodding around, living the sort of suburban middle-aged housewife life and taking the kids to school and nursery and that sort of thing. And I started to really reassess what I was doing with myself. And I've always had a passion for fitness. I don't always do it, but I've got a passion for it.
Yeah.
And I decided to start studying because I never went to university, and I thought, okay, well, I really like fitness. Let me learn about it. So I started doing a degree with the OU in sports fitness and coaching. And while I was doing that, I got really interested in nutrition. So I started studying nutrition as well. And I really started paying attention to how what I ate and what I put in my body was affecting me. And it first actually started with me noticing that red meat was having a really negative effect on me. I found that whenever I ate loads of red meat, and I loved a steak, I would be really, really moody for the next few days.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know what it is. It's something to do with the protein in it, and some people just react to it and some don't.
yeah.
So as I started doing that, I started really thinking about other things that I was consuming and how it was affecting me. And I just started realizing that when I drank, even small amounts, the impact it was having on me in the long term was getting more and more noticeable as I took away the other things and I realized what was going on. And it was really weird because I have been around alcohol every single day for all of my adult life, right? I worked in bars and restaurants, so booze is just there. It's free, have it whenever. And so I just slowly started realizing that I didn't really want to drink anymore. I didn't really enjoy it. I wasn't enjoying the impact of it. I found that it was becoming really perfunctory. It was just like, oh, you're out, so you should have a drink. And I started exploring, just what is there out there, what information is there. I came across Ruby Warrington's book, the Sober Curious book, read that and thought, okay, well, this is really interesting. And then suddenly I was seeing the term everywhere. I guess it's one of those things, once you see something once, right, you see it like loads of places. And then I realized that this was an area that I wanted to explore more, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know, how to get into it. I'm not professionally trained. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a coach. So I thought, well, that's not something I I can just jump into. And then I started realizing there weren't many resources, there weren't many places to go and get information about low and no alcohol drinks that weren't full-on sobriety places, you know, that weren't just saying, giving the message that once you start thinking about your drinking, then it means that you've got a problem and you need to stop. And I just thought, where is there a place for people like me who just want to know what's available and what's out there? Where can they go? And there wasn't anywhere. So I thought, well, okay, I'll make something. And it was one of those light bulb moments. I call it a shower moment. It just sort of came to me. And then I didn't do anything about it. And then a few months later, it came back to me, and I put the feelers out. I sent out some questions. I asked some friends. I put a survey out to my very small personal Instagram account. And the response that came back was a resounding, yeah, we'd love a magazine. We really want something. And then I realized that because I'd said it, someone else might do it. So I had to go. And so I did. And that was it. And the first one came out in April of this year.
And I would describe when that came to you, that wisdom, the idea, and then it went away and then it came back again. I would call that a download. That's like divine intelligence. And I always say you can tell the difference between a download or our higher self and our ego self, because our intuition, downloads, whatever you want to call them, they're really neutral. They drop in and then they drop out again. If something's going round and round and round and round our head like a washing machine brain, that's not our intuition, that's our ego catastrophizing. And right. That's classic, that you had that kind of nudge, that download, this is what you should do, this is your aligned path, and then it went away and it came back again and reminded you that these nudges are so easy to ignore if our ego gets a little bit too big for its boots, right? We can talk it down and go, no, that won't, we can possibly do that. So what was it so I suppose it was the making yourself accountable by saying it out loud that then gave you that oomph to kind of commit and just take that risk, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it was, my intention was just to go and put the feelers out and find out if this idea had any legs, you know, and see if there would be anyone interested. And then I guess it was a combination of the resounding positivity I got and the resounding sort of yeses. Like, there were a couple of people that said, no, I'm not interested, but I was like, okay, well, that's to be expected. Okay. It was that. And then I thought, well, if it's a really good idea, maybe somebody else would do it, so I should get in there and do it first. But part of me also went, you had an idea and you're excited about something, so you should do it. And I was definitely scared, and my ego definitely played a big part of it, you know. I wrote about the imposter syndrome that I've felt for most of my career, and I definitely felt it when I started doing the magazine. But interestingly enough, now a few months in, even though I can still consider myself to be quite ignorant of a lot of the things that I speak to brands and other people about, I'm very much in a learning phase. My imposter syndrome is not the same. I'm actually now, I was talking to a friend about it this morning, you know, I am quite happy to say to somebody, what does that mean? You know, you're talking about dealkalization and reverse osmosis. Can you explain that a little bit more, please? Because I don't, you know, I'm quite happy to do that because I feel like I'm in the right place doing the right thing. And if I don't get it, then there must be other people out there that don't get it. So if I can ask that question and help them get the answers, then surely that's a good thing, right? I'm prepared to look stupid to help other people feel like they get more knowledge.
I love that you just called out your imposter syndrome, because this is something that comes up with pretty much every client I see. Everyone thinks you're the only person that has it. And I'm like, no, everyone has it. It's completely normal. It's just your ego telling you that you can't do it when you can. And actually, I'd say as a journalist, which you are, no one would ever think badly of you asking loads of questions. So that's so good that you've overcome that, because I know it pops up all the time, even when you've dealt with it. Everyone has the experience of it popping up, and actually I think it just shows that we are growing, coming out of our comfort zone. So I think imposter syndrome is a great sign that you're not staying stuck. So yeah. That's awesome. So tell us more then about your experience with being alcohol free. How long have you been alcohol free for, and what kind of shifts have you noticed in yourself?
Sure. So I put a post about this a little while ago. I don't actually know how many days it's been. So I know a lot of people count their days, whether that's using an app or just, you know, like chalk marks on the wall. So I don't know how many days, because for me, I never made that solid decision to say, I'm never drinking again. It was more of a slow realization of what was happening and how I was feeling. But the last time I remember purposefully requesting or consuming a full alcoholic drink was about a year and what are we in now? October. So a year and 4 months ago at my brother's wedding, and when I had a glass of champagne or Prosecco or whatever it was. And that was the last time that I recall having a full glass of alcohol. And then that New Year's Eve, my best friends came over to our house because we've all got small kids. We don't go out. And he brought a magnum of champagne, full strength alcohol champagne. And I remember we all had a glass poured, and I took a sip and I was like, oh my God, this tastes horrible. Gave it to my husband, went to the fridge and got out a bottle of like Prosecco or whatever alcohol-free bubbles I had in the fridge. So for me, it's been very much a journey of just self-realization that I feel so much better when I don't drink. Rather than, I've been quite fortunate that I've never had sort of like a rock bottom. I mean, I've had a lot of rock bottoms, probably didn't recognize them at the time, but not one at the moment that led to this. And it's been funny because I never went, all right, from this day on, I'm never drinking again. There have been times when I've tasted alcohol. So my husband still drinks, my friends still drink. We went to pub in the park in Chiswick a few months ago. And obviously I was scouting out all the alcohol-free places and having some lovely cocktails from people like Mahala and Wednesday's Domain for their wines. And then my husband was having all these cocktails and things. And if he has something that's really nice, he'll say, oh, this is really nice. Do you want to taste it? And I'll occasionally taste things, because also as I focus on drinks, I need to be able to compare and contrast. And, you know, I come from a long background of it. And I had 3 or 4 tiny sips of different things that he had, the tasters that he had. One was like an espresso martini, one was a rum, just tiny little sips. Didn't enjoy them at all. I was like, okay, right, I've got that taste profile there. The next day I felt like crap.
Really?
I felt like, and honestly, the amount of alcohol that I would have consumed would have been no more than like what you'd find in 2 sips of wine, you know, collectively. So I found that I didn't like the taste of anything. And my taste profile has completely changed now. Because I think when you first start drinking alcohol-free or low alcohol drinks, they do taste different. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't taste like a beer, it doesn't taste like a, you know, they do taste different. And of course they do. They particularly like spirits and wines. There's a lot of alcohol that you've taken out, it's going to taste different. I'm amazed at how quickly my palate has acclimatized to that.
Me too, actually.
It's one of the biggest shifts that I've noticed. And now when my friend comes over and I give him stuff to taste and he still drinks and he's like, oh, that tastes horrible. I'm like, no, it's really lovely.
You know what? I'll just give you a funny anecdote that will make you chuckle. So I remember before I left Dubai, I tried this new alcohol-free gin. And I thought, this is brilliant. It even smells like gin. It tastes like gin. And I gave some to my friend. She won't mind me saying, my friend Sophie. And I was like, Sophie, this is amazing. Don't you think this is just like having a gin and tonic? And she took a sip and she went, darling, you've not had a drink for a long time, have you? And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe my palate's changed. But it really does, isn't it? In a good way, I think.
I think it's akin to smoking. Because in a past life, 20 odd years ago, when I used to smoke, and you know, your palate changes when you stop smoking because the chemicals from the nicotine and the tar, you know, they impact your mouth and your taste buds and everything. And alcohol is the same, right? Alcohol is really strong, so it's going to impact your taste buds and your taste receptors. So when you take that away, your palate can become more sensitive to the other nuances and the other flavors that you'll get in a drink. So I think you taste more.
I agree. And I think this is really reassuring for any of our listeners who have just stopped drinking. If you've tried a few alcohol-free options and you're feeling a bit underwhelmed, note that your palate is going to change, and if they're feeling a bit not quite touching the sides at the moment, I mean, there's a few reasons why you might be feeling like that, but that won't last, and they will become more fulfilling, if you like, more palatable and richer as your palate comes back to life, as it were. So on
Absolutely.
that note, sorry,
No,
very excited about my next question. On that note, okay, so imagine that we've got lots of listeners right now, which I'm sure we have, who are at the beginning of their sober curious or alcohol-free journey. And I always say to clients that one of the best things you can do is to create a feeling of abundance. There's no lack here. This is abundance. And I say, you know, enjoy trying out the different alcohol-free drinks, make it a treat, keep the ritual, change the ingredient, as Janie Lee Grace always says. So what would be your starter pack must-haves in the alcohol-free drinks toolkit?
Oh, okay. So I think one of the it depends obviously on people's taste profiles and what they prefer.
Yeah.
But the easiest places to start are with the things that are most similar to what you've already been enjoying.
True, yeah.
So, whilst I always hate to sort of generalize across genders or big groups of people, studies have shown that female palates tend to be slightly sweeter than male palates are slightly drier or more bitter. So if those are the kind of things that you liked before, I always say go for something that's a little bit similar.
Yeah.
So if you used to like drinking Prosecco's and porn star martinis and rosé wines, trying a non-alcoholic or alcohol-free sparkling wine is a really good place to start. Because alcohol contains a lot of sugar. And that's one of the things that people really are drawn to. You know, you go back to that sugar and that sweetness. And sparkling alcohol-free drinks have a higher sugar content than still ones or than beers. So it's actually quite easy to transition. And there are some really interesting, amazing things to try out there that taste sweeter, but that aren't full of loads of horrible sugar. And a lot of the supermarkets now have a whole range of stuff. Sainsbury's is really good. Their own brand sparkling wine is actually really good. And I know I published a magazine and I am about championing the small guy, but most people are just dealing with going to the shop, right? You're putting on your onesie and off to the supermarket. So there's always some good stuff there. And then I think with beers, it's definitely a case of trying. There's some really out there stuff, some really amazing out there independent craft brewers like Mash Gang who create like crazy flavors and collabs with other people. But then there's also some of your brands that are really trying to not recreate, but to give people that sense of comfort from what they had before. So brands like Lucky Saint, who are absolutely huge, right? If you're interested in alcohol free, you've heard of Lucky Saint. Is one of those brands I get told by lots of people that tastes just like you're having a full strength beer.
Yeah.
And my husband loves Guinness, loves full strength Guinness. I've never been able to stand the stuff myself. And he swears that the Guinness 00 tastes exactly the same as the original full strength Guinness. Amazing. So it's just about trying out these different things and seeing what's out there, and go to your supermarket and try what's on the shelves as a starting point, because some of them are doing really well. And as much as we need to champion these independent breweries, we also need to get our big shops, our big services to recognize that there is a call for this so that they can start stocking more and that they can bring in more of those small producers. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's so helpful and interesting. And I agree, there's so many amazing alcohol-free beers. I mean, I like all alcohol-free drinks. I think it's just so much fun trying them all. But the alcohol-free beers particularly, I think of the closest to, I mean, I now swear I cannot tell the difference in taste at all. Whereas obviously with wine and the Prosecco, you can tell, but they're still very like fun to drink. Alcohol-free beer, I just love it. I love an Erdinger.
Yes.
Or a Leffe alcohol-free as well. They're great.
If you like Leffe, you should try. There's one called Maiselweiss. Ooh. And it is like a white beer, alcohol-free white beer, and it is just brilliant. Ooh. Absolutely love it.
Oh, I'm very excited to try that. Yeah, because I think so much of what we if we've got a FOMO about not drinking alcohol, I think most of it is purely the romantic ritual that we have created around alcohol, and so much of that is about our tribal nature. And I always say to my clients, like, you don't have to miss out on any of that, and the alcohol-free drinks industry has made it even easier. And actually, once you've got past the initial pangs of like withdrawal, or however mild or strong they might be, it's more fun drinking alcohol-free drinks. They've got a much more exciting range. We've got things popping up all over the place. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for it, really, because it just makes it feel fun and abundant to keep
I totally agree. There are so many amazing brands out there, and what I find is that these producers are trying really hard. This isn't just your Heineken zeros and your Peroni zeros. Okay, yeah, great, they do those, and I definitely recommend you give them a try, because they'll remind you of what you used to have and you'll feel comfortable with it. But these independent brands are putting so much effort into making amazing drinks for people, because they are doing what all the best entrepreneurs and startups do, and they are solving a problem that they are facing themselves. And because they want to drink the best, they want to make the best for other people to drink, and there's so much passion. I just interviewed a woman called Zoe Henderson, who is the founder of Function Mushroom Beer. I mean, there's a mushroom. Yeah. Like, there's so much interesting innovation out there. There's people inspired by the fact that they like running, like Rich from Clean Break Brewing, whose lager is inspired by the fact that he wanted to write a book and call it Clean Break, and then he realized it was a brand, and that he loves to run and he wants to put his running and his beer together. It's so interesting.
So here's a question. Do you think the pandemic has played a part in this alcohol-free revolution and alcohol-free drinks explosion?
110%, absolutely. I think it's played a huge part on both sides, both from the consumer side and from the producer side. So a lot of people that I speak to, a lot of brands that I speak to, either to interview or they write for the magazine, a lot of them have started during the pandemic, because they themselves found that they were drinking too much and they wanted a solution. They tried this, that, and the other, and couldn't find anything. So they thought, well, how hard can it be? I'll go and do it. Turns out it's actually quite hard. And then from the consumer side as well, a lot of people were sitting around at home with nothing to do and found themselves drinking way too much, and so started exploring options and what's out there. Now, I think with all of these things, whenever there is an explosion of interest and input, of course there will inevitably be a dip, because if 100 people decide to make an alcohol-free beer tomorrow, next week 50 of them would have changed their mind, and next week 25 of them would have found it's too hard, and then so on and so forth. But the good ones, and the ones who care, the ones that put the effort in, the ones that are passionate about it, they stick around and they're still going. But I think that's good. I think it's good that there's been such an influx of creativity into the area, because it's really pushed things forward, and it's really driven the interest in the sector, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I know for me, that was when I had my last gin and tonic in lockdown. And I think it's so interesting, isn't it, when you look at chaos and how obviously chaos creates a lot of collateral damage, and there's lots of upsetting things that happen, but we innovate in chaos, and from chaos comes rebirth. And I just think it's so interesting to think what would not be here now if that hadn't have happened. I think we forget how much things have shifted sometimes. And yeah, I'm very grateful for the alcohol-free drink scene. I think it's absolutely amazing. So here's the question then. You are really very near the beginning of your awesome magazine journey. What is on the horizon? What's your big vision
for the magazine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So when I think big picture, when I think future, so when I started this, my goal was just to see if I could do it, just to create it and see if anyone would be interested. And then literally just a few weeks into it, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. This is what I want to be doing. I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
For me, one day I would love to see Low No Drinker magazine on the shelves in your WH Smiths, in your local post office or newsagent, right up there next to Cosmo, Men's Health, Good Housekeeping, Fly Fishing Weekly, Low No Drinker magazine.
Oh.
Because if there can be a magazine about fishing,
Yeah.
and then there could definitely be a magazine
Absolutely.
about low and no alcohol drinks.
You know what? I think this is absolutely going to happen. Just from my spiritual manifestation perspective, you are following what lights you up. That is never a dead end. And you listen to your intuition. You're getting constant feedback that you're on the right path. Yeah. And I feel very excited for you. I think that's absolutely going to happen. And I will be in WH Smith putting myself on Instagram going, look, it's here. So yeah. I'm sure everyone listening is desperate to go and buy a copy. So how can they buy a copy at the moment?
Yes, please be as enthusiastic for buying a copy as you can. So the magazine is available either as single issue purchase or as a subscription. So it's all via the Low No Drinker website, which is lownodrinkermagazine.com.
Yeah.
And then people can subscribe to either the digital version of the magazine or the print version, or a combo of both. And that's available to people in the UK and all around the world. So there's no excuse, really.
Yeah. And I will, of course, put that link in the show notes.
Thank you.
You can also find Denise on Instagram. What is your Instagram tag for everybody listening?
It's the same. It's at Low No Drinker Magazine.
Yeah.
I kept it all simple because I can't remember lots of different things.
No, I don't blame you. Me too. Oh, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure. And you've made me feel like I'm going to have an alcohol-free drink this evening. I'm feeling in the mood now.
Go for it. Yeah. Out there to try.
And I look forward to having you back on the podcast. I'm sure there'll be some point where you've got some exciting updates for us and you can come on and let us all know about them.
I would love to. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Anneka. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to me today. If you would like to have the chance of winning a free one-to-one coaching session with me, then I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. All you need to do is take a screenshot of the review and send it to me at thrive@coachingbyaneka.co.uk, and I would love to connect with you. If you would like to connect with me further and you'd like to download my free guide, then please go to my website and you can do that and you'll be added to my mail list. Or if you would just like to book in a free discovery call with me, then you can do so via my email address or through my website. All of these links will be in the show notes. And I hope you have a wonderful, magical, sober week, and I will see you this time next week.